just to introduce everybody very quickly, we have both of the executive producers, creators of The Last Ship, King Steinberg, Stephen Kane. We also have Charles Parnell and Travis Van Winkle. And so, who wants to fire the last question? First question.
That was short.
We have you right here.
There have been a lot of post-apocalyptic stories being told recently. What's going to make this one really stand out?
Me. No.
This is actually what I was talking a little bit about in the panel briefly, is that we don't think of the show as post-apocalyptic, we think of it as apocalyptic. So it's, even some shows you'll say it's 50 years after the Great War, or even 2 years since the lights went out. This is happening right now. So it is, how do you deal with it in the moment? And we'll get tastes of how America and the rest of the world are dealing with it in the moment as well, and how cultures are dealing with it. So it's a really interesting examination. It's science fiction, I think, in a very pure sense, in the sense that the science part is really based in reality, the reality of a virus, which we're seeing in MERS in Saudi Arabia, we're seeing in the Arctic with these discoveries. And it's the reality of how societies would deal in these kinds of catastrophic situations. And then you go into the philosophical questions about what does it mean to be human and what does it mean to be civilized. But as opposed to saying, the world's is over and now we're looking at it later, it's happening in the moment. So it's apocalyptic, not pre or post-apocalyptic.
There's a line from the next episode, right in the first 3 minutes, which is, every day that we don't make it home with a vaccine, the day another 500,000 people die. That's a very different paradigm than other action-adventure shows with crews in space or wherever. They have a particular mission and they can save the world, and there is a ticking clock and there is an urgency to everything that they are doing. And so, each episode of the first season, as an example, is it's its own episode with its own theme and beginning, middle, and end. But the trajectory of the whole first season is one serialized story of, are we going to get the vaccine and the cure, and if we do, are we going to go home? And what are we going to find when we get home? And what's going to be the next thing? And so, so you ask what makes it different. I think what makes it different is they have a mission and they are the last hope. And they truly have it. And that means if they potentially have that vaccine or developing that vaccine, that is the most coveted commodity on the planet in the history of the planet. And so who's chasing them? Who wants it? And so all those things give our show a different level of urgency, and also it has motion. They are moving on a ship, going from place to place, having adventures, both internal, existential adventures on the ship, and also many adventures off the ship. And the trajectory of the season has an incredible drive. And I think it's going to be both the kind of show that people, can't wait to watch week to week and have a cliffhanger, and it's also going to be a binge watch experience where people are going to want to inhale 4 or 5 episodes, at 3 in the morning, and their wives are going to be saying, "Honey, come to bed," or vice versa. So, I think it's really a show that's fit for the modern audience now.
These guys lived as, I should let them speak to it, that they lived as actors playing real sailors around real sailors. And there was a moment on the ship last time we were filming down in San Diego. We were filming on a real ship, USS Dewey, where the commercial for The Last Ship came on one of the TVs while we were all in the dining area. And we all cheered together. We were so excited because it was their ship and our crew and their crew. And in that moment, we were all shipmates. And we learned so much from them about what it means to be a sailor and what honor, courage, and commitment are. And these guys have brought it to life. And, I think that, so to answer your question again, there's different kind of heroes that you've seen before. And unlikely heroes in some ways because they didn't ask for this, they didn't sign up for this, but also highly trained heroes. So we hope that when you watch this, you think, if the plague ever comes, this is the ship I want to be on with these guys.
What exotic locations have you been filming in, and how much of a character are those locations?
Well, we've been using the movie magic of being able to shoot in LA and San Diego and green screens and visual effects to create a lot of different worlds. So in the next episode after the pilot, at the end of the pilot, the captain says we're going to Guantanamo Bay to get supplies. So the next episode takes place, on a naval base at Gitmo, and it will look like Cuba, and it will look like the ship is pulling into Gitmo, and we found the location here that was a really good image of that. There's another episode where they have to go look for monkeys when the doctor thinks that she might have a vaccine for testing, and we go into the jungle of Nicaragua. And we were actually able to shoot, to find a very cool lake here that we were able to shoot, and we can make it feel narrow and make it look like a river, and with the amazing visual effects capabilities that exist now, that it would have made the show a lot harder to do 10 years ago. And of course, being in the Michael Bay family and camp, we have the best visual effects people to be able to help us enhance all of that. And then of course we also go out to sea with real Navy ships and get shots of the ships out in the ocean doing their maneuvers, choppers landing on and off. So there's a huge amount of production value in the show, and the pilot was also shot in Canada. That big sequence on the ice, we went up to Manitoba, Canada, to make it look like
but yeah, the ship really is the most exotic location, because when the crew goes out there for a week filming at sea, living with those people and watching and filming it from above, and nothing compares to that real ship doing its maneuvers. It's a pretty awesome experience.
Right here in the front.
Okay. For you two, what can you tell us about your characters and what makes them stand out as military men and as heroes? Tell us a little bit about your characters.
Hero, I don't know how to answer quite, but as a military man, I play the Master Chief of the ship, which in the big picture is kind of the third ranking member of the ship behind the captain and the XO, but he's really the highest ranking enlisted man. So as a military man, I kind of take the temperature of the ship. I take the temperature of the crew and let the captain and the XO know how policies and rules and things are going over, if there's dissension, if that happens, if people want to get off the ship for any reason. And I also take the temperature of the captain and the XO, and sometimes I need to give them, I basically give everyone what they need in a human sense. While they perform the missions, I kind of keep everybody going and check on people and gauge the temperature. So I help the heroes. I don't know how heroic I am, but I help them be heroic, let's put it that way.
I guess for me, I'll let the audience decide if my character gets to be heroic.
Oh, you're heroic.
But as the Navy SEAL, I get to do all the missions off the boat. So anytime we have a mission, whether it's to get monkeys or whether it's to go do whatever we do, I have to have my crew together, come up with a plan, and then we go out and we get to get our hands dirty. So it's been fun getting to do a lot of action with this show, and it's got Michael Bay written all over it. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we got to do, and I really hope that it mirrors what the real Navy SEALs they do in action. And with them working by our side, I think it's going to be pretty damn authentic.
The other thing that's going on with Travis's character is that, the pilot, he loses his closest friend, and so his character is carrying a lot of the grief. We can't cut to everybody crying about their family, because he just lost his best friend. He's carrying that going forward, and he's also, he's also carrying on this extracurricular relationship with another lieutenant that is not supposed to be doing. So I don't know if Travis, you want to talk to that in terms of how that fills out your character. And
yeah, there's just
a very complex character.
There's a lot that goes on with the relationships that I have and the relationships that I lost, and on top of that, we don't know if our families are alive or not. There's really no communication. So throughout this process of being on mission and having this extraordinary feat ahead of us, it's definitely it's a pretty heavy experience to go through. My character goes through a lot of it, and it's like, how do you put that on the back burner and do your work and succeed in the mission? And I think there's a lot of struggle that happens with that dynamic, and it's a pretty fun ride.
Which is true for every individual character. Kind of goes through that. What's going on with my family that I can't get to? I don't know whether they're alive or dead, or how many of them survived or not. And also we have this immediate thing in front of us of trying to save whoever we can. It may not be the people we want to save, but it's still our brethren.
The real gift of the show is that, a lot of shows you'll have a guest star come in from down the street. We pull from the ship, primarily, and we have 216 odd sailors and a couple scientists and whatnot. to pull from. And so we get a chance to actually get into each person's character at different situations when it's right, and get all that bottom part of the iceberg and get their backstory and their sense, and develop a real knowledge of them. So whereas in the first episode you just see what he described, which is the sort of roving conscience of the ship, and the sort of the sage and the fighter. But as it goes on, you know, he becomes a fighter, he becomes a sage. We learn about why he's in the Navy and why he's devoted his life to the Navy and what pains he's, you know, holding down. So it's a real chance for us as writers to sit around and say, these are our players, and, you know, rather than just wait for, you know, Detective so-and-so to show up and give us this story, we can stick with our guys and learn more about them from the inside out. So we built a pretty large cast of young, and most Navy destroyers are run by young people. They're like in their 20s, early 20s, and so we have a nice cast of older, wiser, experienced, and then younger who didn't know what they were getting into in many ways, and we got a chance to play with all their characters, and they became a family, and it was just a real treat for us as writers and producers.
But we do meet new friends and enemies
Along the way.
Along the way.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
Sorry, Christine. Yeah, I'll get you next.
I wanted to know about like the timeline of the whole, like how everything occurs, because we see it. I got to see the screening, so it skipped ahead like a few months. So, do you know what the timeline was going to be after that? I mean, on their ship, it takes a while to, you know, sail places. And
in the course of like I said, the season has an incredible urgency to it. So I'm not going to give away exactly how many weeks or months, but it's moving at a pretty condensed clip in terms of the amount of time that goes on in the first season, and there's a lot of drive and cliffhangers and suspenseful moments, and like I said, I think you'll be binge watching, and also it's, you know, 500,000 people are going to die every day that they don't make it home. So it's, you know, it's not going to, the first season's not going to be over 3 years. I can tell you that. It's going to be very condensed, energized, urgent period of time.
And in a way, time in the conventional sense doesn't exist on the show, because the time is basically, time equals how many people we think are still alive and what we can do to try to save them. So whatever that formula comes out to be, because we don't really know what it is, but we know that we can try to help some people, so the time kind of equals how those things settle themselves.
But the captain will make decisions based on the fact that we don't have time to waste doing something that might be more practical or might be safer, because we got to get moving, we got to get home. If we think we have a chance of finding the vaccine and getting it, we've got to make decisions based on that. And that's what creates a lot of interesting moments and choices.
From a logistical standpoint, what are the challenges of having this Navy ship as your main set piece? It looked like, from what we saw, that there's some really tight, cramped quarters, and it must not be very easy to get in there to film. So can you talk about that, and for you guys, what it was like to act in those environments?
You kind of answered your own question, though. That's one of the main things.
It was method writing and method
It feels
acting.
claustrophobic when you see it.
Yeah, we ended up building a few sets as well to help us out in the bigger spaces. The pilot you saw, though, was shot entirely on the ship, which was great for us because we really saw the rhythm of the ship, how it really works. But it was also bad for us when we'd be doing a very important scene and suddenly the PA system goes off, or the ship decides to pull in next to us, which is 3 times our size, and make a big sound like it's belching, and you have to sort of wait till that stops. And it's a lot of sound issues, and the poor camera crew and sound crew running up and down ladders with equipment. It was a real military campaign. And these guys, but the thing is, these guys had a chance to be on the real ship first, before we built sets, so that we saw how it really was. And then the biggest thing that made me feel the best was when the real Navy guys came to our sets. They walked on and said, wow, this feels just like our ship, which meant we got it right, and we can recreate that feeling for these guys. So yeah, it's a challenge. The Navy was amazingly cooperative, and especially when you're out to sea with the captain, and it's the captain's ship and you're out to sea, you can say, would you mind turning left really fast and turning right? And so they did a lot of stuff for us, but it was a great joy for us to work with the Navy, and a huge challenge because they are not in the business of working for us. They're doing their mission. Our job is to not get in their way. And so we think it worked out really well, and the Navy was really happy with it.
I would say this is the most challenging, it's logistically the most challenging show I think anyone on the crew had ever been through. And to a man and woman at the end, one person after another on the crew said, this was the hardest show I've ever had and the most satisfying job I've ever had. Because, first of all, we shot all the additional 9 episodes besides the pilot out of sequence in terms of episode 4 was the last episode we wrapped with, and we were cross-boarding scenes and episodes because of trying to consolidate work on location. It was really shot like one huge movie or mini-series where we didn't wrap the final scene or piece of the first episode after the pilot until 5 months later, and the actors, to their credit, were having to carry the storylines from 9 different episodes in their head and go, oh, what scene am I doing today? Which scene is this? And so that was incredibly challenging, but it also allowed the writers to be nimble in terms of our rewriting and our abilities to find things in episode 7 and go back and actually put a scene in episode 2 or 3 that would really change a whole dynamic. So we were, it really gave us an ability to be agile in terms of our storytelling and
to develop the characters more because we knew them.
Yeah. So I mean, I think ultimately, we're all exhausted, but we all feel really, really proud of what we accomplished and excited about what the audience is going to get to see.
And I'll say, just being on the ship, working on an active Navy destroyer, it helped really inform a lot of our characters, and just really walking around in those tight quarters and being on the ship and looking out at the water and feeling the breeze and having to salute every day at 5 o'clock. Well, actually, you can't salute. If you're not wearing a hat or in the Navy, they don't want you to salute. But just to be breathing in their life, just really, it was a treat for all of us as actors, because it just really made us feel like we got to really be in the Navy for a couple weeks. And then when we came to our set, our stage that we had built, we had the real life experience of being on the ship. So I think it really allowed us to bring in some real authenticity to it.
Yeah, 8 a.m. on San Diego, the whole base comes to a stop. Everyone looks at the flag, salutes or puts their hand to their chest, and they do the Star Spangled Banner. And then at sunset, you get a little warning. And no matter what you're doing, drop everything, and they do taps.
There's flag.
There's flag. And the crew of the show got into a rhythm with the crew of the ship, and that I think really informed the way we all worked, which is cool.
But just the tight space was the biggest help in the world in acting, because your imagination, it frees your imagination. Like, you don't have to imagine anything about the ship because it's real. It's already there. All you have to do is imagine your character, the situation, what you want. Those acting things, you can just concentrate on those, and it's a joy to let that go and know that everything else is real behind you. Just want to.
Batman?
Thank you. That actually kind of goes with what I was going to ask. It's obvious that it's about the apocalypse and how everyone has to kind of deal with that, and the human race is going. That's a very serious thing, obviously.
This is a comedy.
Yeah. But how much of the show is the crew kind of dealing with their own ship and their own, kind of like a Das Boot, like, we're running out of food, running out of oxygen, it's cramped quarters, I'm going to kill the guy next to me, I don't trust him, he stole my sandwich, stuff like that.
Yes, I mean, that is a huge part of the balance of the show. There's a lot of the popcorn and action adventure stuff, which is organic to the concept of the show, and makes that enjoyable for that, in terms of that part of a viewer's appetite. And then there's the incredible emotional and psychological pressure of these people being contained on this claustrophobic ship, and when the first episode after the pilot starts, they have already been cooped up for 6 months, and now they have to start continuing out and they don't know how long it's going to last, or if they're going to run out of food, or if they're going to run out of water, or if they're going to run out of supplies. And so, yes, there are several episodes that are all about the challenges to the captain and his leadership in terms of how does he hold the people together when there's a major malfunction on the ship and there is no infrastructure, there's no Navy to call to say, send over someone to help us with this, we're running out of water. Or what happens when morale starts to dip and things aren't going as well as they hoped, and what happens if people's enlistments are up? You're not paying them, What if they don't want to stay anymore? How do you deal with that? You're going to just keep them there against their will? How are you going to let them go? And then what happens if they go? Then what happens to the morale of everyone else? What's going to make everyone else want to stay and swim in the same direction? So those are the things that are really particular to this show and this concept and organic to the framework of what we've come up with, that are a really exciting element that keeps the show feeling both entertaining on an action level and suspenseful and on an emotional and psychological level in terms of what these people are enduring. And I think it's that balance that's going to make the show really stand out.
But we have to find creative solutions to some of the questions you asked, but we face them on the show, for sure.
And up here?
How does the geopolitical situation affect what's happening on the ship?
The real geopolitical?
Like, as far as, in the pilot, the Russians are involved, and so how does that affect the story going forward? So what's going on with the ship?
I mean, we're dealing with the reality of the world in the show. We're not dealing with like what Putin's doing in Ukraine or anything like that. But
well, in the pilot, isn't the Russian?
It is the Russian, yeah. Yeah. So in the story, what we learn is the virus and the pandemic causes chaos, both at a local level and a global level and a geopolitical level. So you have countries not trusting each other, countries saying, well, you're hoarding the cure, you did this, you weaponized this could not have been done, and all this mistrust is going on. In the middle of this, Rachel is sent on this secret mission up to the Arctic with the Navy, and it's a top secret mission, mostly because they don't want to create panic back home and panic on the ship. But there's also an element of, okay, this is our deal. Now, the Russians who are attacking in the pilot are not necessarily the Russian government, as the president says from the bunker. It's a breakaway Navy from the Russian government who decided on their own, you know what, it's better for us to not go home and risk getting infected. We'll stay at sea. We'll go after that cure. And we'll be the ones in charge. So, and we have a very big conflict. We have a debate between the captain, eventually, and a counterpart enemy who says, the Navy, the uniform doesn't matter anymore. We rule the seas. And the captain says, whether mine is one of a dozen or it's the last ship in the U.S. Navy, I'm still a sailor in the U.S. Navy and I still honor that code. So you get the sense of two different kinds of ways of reacting to it. But we get the sense of the global political stuff from a lot of the backstory and also from this Russian angle. But then we also get a sense from what we're hearing on our radios, from distress calls, and from places we stop about how this pandemic is affecting other parts of the world. And then, hopefully the audience will get a chance to see more of how it affected America.
And we don't know how many governments are still intact. So
that's one of the fun things about the show is how isolated they are, and that's another psychological, emotional pressure that is weighing on the crew and the captain. I mean, they don't have internet, and there's nobody answering their radio calls. And
imagine you're in this room and your lights go out and your phone doesn't work, and you don't know is it just local or is the whole city gone black? You can't tell. That's kind of how it feels for them.
So they don't have a lot of information, and what they're they're gleaning from pieces that they pick up on distress calls, on radios, and whenever they stop, what can they extrapolate from what they see in the world when they stop, and they really don't know. And if and when they are going to make it home in America, they have no idea what they're going to find there when they hit America. So
they haven't heard from the president, they haven't heard from the bunker, so is there a country to go home to? So that's the political side of it.
Okay, next question right here.
I was going to ask, you've created a lot of urgency in the program, which I think will help people watch it every week to see what's going to happen, but I don't see you running this into a seven-year series.
It's good thing
what's
you don't get TNT.
Yes. What's the life expectancy of keeping this type of
7 years.
Yeah, well, everybody would be dead. There would be no point in having a vaccine.
People asked us that when we had the pilot. They said, is this a show? Is this really a show? And it's amazing how much story it's yielded us so far. We have so many more stories left to tell. We're not concerned about that.
I have one side question. Why didn't you send the helicopter the 200 miles inland? Why were they going to go ashore? Why didn't they just send the helicopter to go look and see what was going on?
Do we have one last question? Nope. Oh, yeah. All right. Last question.
Are you going to be showing how the virus, will the virus be mutating more to like, it would be violent, or I don't see it staying like zombies? Will we see more of the civilians being infected with the virus and how that virus like progresses?
Yeah, the virus is a character. The virus is a big character in the show. Rachel is obsessed with this virus. The scientist is obsessed with this virus. The virus she discovers in the pilot. She discovers it once in Egypt, and she discovers it on the Italian cruise ship. She realizes it's changed, but not in the traditional way a virus mutates. It looks like it's almost been engineered. So that raises another question of, did somebody weaponize it? Was it an accident? Was it, And so the virus has its own mythology, which we tracked as well during the series. And it's this hidden monster because you can't see it coming, which is really adds another level of tension to every scene they're in. And you saw it on the cruise ship. The minute Frankie gets exposed to it, he knows. So the virus is definitely the antagonist that we never can see, but we can see the results of it. And we also know the virus has many fathers.
I do want to go back to your question because it's been like a year and a half since we developed the pilot. We haven't been asked a question about the pilot like that in a long time. But we did have an answer then, which was the point was that he cannot count on having power from generators. So even if they sent the chopper out to do a flyover, and if they saw something from the air, it really wouldn't tell them what the infrastructure was like and what it would be like and whether there would be, if they settled there and it looked safe for a week, would the civil unrest come to them? And it just makes a lot more sense to the captain to stay in what he considers to be the safest place on Earth. But to answer your question, in other episodes down the line, when they arrive at places, including in the very next episode, they do send the chopper ahead to do a sweep, to check it out before they walk into danger. But that's the answer to your question.
Because you will need equipment to manufacture a vaccine, not just to find one. If you actually want to manufacture it, it's a whole other process involved.
That's a whole season, you see.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And right